Hey, but you didn't expect to see me this morning, but I am here for the third time on stage this morning. I am excited to be here, guys. I'm really impressed with our band for a lot of different reasons. I actually just wrote that song this morning at Volunteer Huddle. I just wrote the lyrics, and Matt's like, "We got this. We can turn this around." The only part that didn't make the cut, I pitched this part that went do 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 do, and I guess it didn't make the cut. But there's always a second chance for that. Uh, yeah, okay. Um, Maybe. I have a question for you this morning. Does anybody have a really overbearing neighbor? Yeah, some of you are willing to raise your hands. I love that because they're not here in the room. Uh, and if they were, you probably still will. An overbearing neighbor, an overbearing coworker, an overbearing friend. You know these people, right? Like the needy people of the world, the people who are just always up in your business. My wife and I bought our house almost 11 years ago. And when we moved into the village of Shepherd, which is a beautiful little village, the place where everybody knows your name, like that type of a town, it's a great place. We love it there. I knew what I was getting into the moment I was there for my housing inspection, because I went up on the roof with the inspector, and my neighbor from across the street, for the sake of the story, so I don't embarrass him, I'm going to call him Ron, because that's his name. I get confused if I do fake names and things, so we'll say what it is. So Ron across the street is like, I see you're climbing the corporate ladder to get a raise, huh? And I'm like, oh, okay, I've got one of these neighbors, or I'm about to. I'm not sure I want to sign up for this. And he was all up in everything that we did for the first few years that we lived there. Like there was one point where I'm digging a couple of holes in the front yard to see where something was running. He's like, oh, he from across the street, it's never good to see a homeowner digging in his front yard. And I'm like, I'm not even doing anything, bud. Okay. And then I could count on it at least 4 or 5 times a week when we first moved in, the doorbell would ring, and I would know exactly who's at the door. I would know. There was always something he wanted to say. There was a story he wanted to share. There was something he wanted to know what we were up to. He knows everything. Like he knows everything that's happening in the community. He knows everything about you, and yes. And in the summer, we've got a pool in the backyard, which my kids love. Turns out Ron also is a big fan of pools. And so Ron came over, and we had pool parties. Like Ron's that kind of guy. And I learned very quickly that if I was going to care for my neighbors, this is a very important concept that hit hard. Caring for others is an inconvenience. It's an inconvenience. Like there were so many times I'm sitting on the couch and I hear the doorbell and my head just went, what's it now, Ron? What's it now? And so I'd go to the front door. Sure enough, it's Ron. Hey, Ron, how you doing? You put game face on, like, hey, friendly neighbor, how we doing? And so then Ron would let himself in, and we would talk for the next hour and a half. And, I think Ron knew how we decorated the house more than we did. Like, he was in there so often. And it's just crazy. But here's the deal. Like, Ron taught me something really important. Ron, anytime, it started to flip a switch. About a year in, I realized what was happening because I bought bunk beds for my boys as we were getting ready for Kenzie to be born, and we needed to move 2 boys together into one room, and so I bought bunk beds, and I pulled it out of the back of my truck, and it was in a box, and bunk beds are not light, and so I'm pulling this out by myself, and I'm like, I'm a man, I can handle this, and the moment I start pulling it out, Ron comes running out his front door. He comes over. He grabs the other side of the box. He's like, where are we going? And he could never remember my name for that first year, so he just called me Pastor. Where are we going, Pastor? And I'm like, we're going in the house, Ron. Like, that's where I want to build the bed, in the house. But we went upstairs, and so he helped me carry it up the stairs. And I kid you not, Ron was there for the next 2.5 hours building it with me. Like, he's like, oh, okay, we need help. What are we doing? And then later, like, in Shepherd, there are tons of maple trees. We do this maple syrup festival. There's maple trees everywhere. Our front yard is covered in leaves in the fall. So I'm out there raking, and Ron, in his late 70s, comes over and starts raking with me. And he just starts talking. And we just shoot the breeze, and we're raking. And there was one point where all I was doing was putting washer fluid in my truck, and he came over, oh, working on the engine, what do you need? How can I help? I'm like, I'm just putting this blue juice in the car. That's all I'm doing. But Ron, he didn't take the perspective that caring for people is not an inconvenience. He took the perspective that caring for people is an inconvenience, but it's worth it. Because you're helping somebody. You're taking care of them. And I knew, like, from a young age, like, I've known Jesus for most of my life, and I've known the principles of caring for people and the importance of serving people and loving and putting yourself aside for the sake of somebody else. But I had never been taught it in real life like that. And Ron passed away a few years ago, and I got to share just some of the stories of how he impacted my life at his memorial service, and it was really incredible. The guy taught me how to be a neighbor. He taught me how to love people. He taught me how to do all sorts of things. And it was one of those things, like, I could hear messages about love all day long, and I could hear messages about taking care of people all day long. But seeing it in real life is a game changer. Like, something is different because of that. Now, if you read through Scripture, the idea of loving people, caring for people, reads through from beginning to end. Like, you can find that message all through the whole thing. My favorite parts, though, are in parts like in 1 Corinthians, where it talks about love. 1 Corinthians 13, if you've been to a wedding, you've probably heard the 1 Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind. Why we say that at weddings, I don't know, because they already love each other. They don't need to learn, like, what, it's not even what the passage is about. But it's like, love is patient, love is kind, don't forget that. I'm like, they're clearly, they love each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. And I'm guilty because I've shared it at a wedding before because they asked for it. But, you know, it's okay. See, what was happening in the book of Corinthians was it was being written to a bunch of people who were professional Christians, who knew what to do, who knew how to follow Jesus, but they were so obsessed with being the most gifted spiritually person that they missed the boat. They were so concerned about how to be the best person in the room, how to be the most important person in the room. And it's saying you could be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you don't love somebody, you're missing the mark. And we all know that those people were not the greatest things since sliced bread. You are not the greatest thing since sliced bread. In fact, the greatest thing since sliced bread, it comes in this box about this big. It's got holes in it. It's deep fried. It comes out. And at Chick-fil-A, they serve them and call them waffle fries. Oh. Like, you can argue what the greatest thing since sliced bread is, but I know, I have tasted and I have found the greatest thing. And you dip that in the Chick-fil-A sauce. Oh, and there's little holes in it so that you know the calories have slipped through. And by definition, it's holy. Like, I need to eat this. Have you ever eaten too many Chick-fil-A waffle fries? Of course you haven't, because it's not possible. Like, they're so good. No, okay, so these people, that was a tangent. These people are so obsessed with being the greatest thing ever that they miss the mark. And so it goes on to say the greatest thing, the most important thing is love. It says this at the end of the chapter. Now these three things remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. More than faith, more than hope that Jesus is going to return, the way you love makes the greatest impact. Because I think you learn faith and you learn hope through loving people. It becomes real. It becomes tangible. It becomes something that you can see in real life. The Corinthians people were confidently saying, I don't get it. I don't get it. I hear that all the time because I tell dad jokes and my kids don't get them. And it's so disappointing. Like, I have a dad joke app on my phone that is like gold, the best app I've ever downloaded. And so I'm before bed talking to my kids, and I said, Liam, why don't you ever see an elephant in an apple tree? He says, because they don't climb trees. And I said, no, it's because they're so good at hiding. And he looked at me and straight face, yeah, I don't get it. Oh, come on. I don't get it. These people didn't get it. They didn't understand that love was the most important thing. They didn't understand how to love. They didn't understand how to do this. And if you were with us a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this idea of love as we worked through our Core 52 guide for this last year that we've been working through. If you don't have a Core 52 book, pick one up because we're still working through it for a little while. But Mark Moore in the book talks about love a couple of weeks ago, just some really good stuff. And now fast forward to where we are today, and it's kind of like a love part 2. And why would he do that? Why would he do a second part to it? Because it's the most important thing. Like, it's so important, and we don't get it. Andy Stanley, a megachurch pastor in the Atlanta area, somebody asked him, how come you teach about love so often? Why don't you teach about something else? And his response was gold. He says, well, when you figure out how to actually do it, I'll move on to the more advanced stuff. I'm like, woo, okay. I didn't say it, he did. So you guys all have it figured out. But that was so good. But Old Testament, here's what happened. Before Jesus came, there was this idea of something called a sacrifice, where the only way to connect you to God because of your sin, because of your brokenness, was to sacrifice an animal, and that blood would cover the penalty of that sin, and you would be allowed to move forward. There'd be a restored relationship. There was this just ongoing thing, and so you'd mess up again, and there's another sacrifice, and the community would mess up, and there's sacrifice on behalf of the community. There's all this different ritual that happens, and then Jesus comes, and he sacrifices his own life to take care of that, to restore people's relationship with God, and this sacrifice becomes the model for how we love and how we serve. The sacrifice is important. And so the idea of the day is sacrifice. And here's my working definition if you just want to get this in your head. Kill something off as an offering for someone else. To kill something off, or to give something up on behalf of somebody else, for somebody else's benefit. And there's pain in that. There's pain in sacrifice in this old code where they would actually kill an animal. Death was involved. But for us, as we serve and as we give something up, yeah, sometimes it hurts to give something up on behalf of other people. For me, it hurt to get off of the couch. That's a lot of repetitive motion to go meet my neighbor at the front door. No, that you give something up so that somebody else can have a better life, so someone else can have a better opportunity. And Jesus took that and he showed it through Jesus' life. And John in chapter 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. And if you grew up in a church, you heard this. If you've watched Tim Tebow, you've seen it on his eyes. But if you've never memorized this verse, this is the most important verse in the entire Bible, because this is the story of why Jesus came and how we can have life and how we can live. And this not only became a gift of God on our behalf, this became a model of how to love. That you would give yourself up on behalf of somebody else. It's an undeserved gift. It's a model. And so here's the idea. A Christ-like sacrifice is always for the benefit of someone else, not for personal gain. A Christ-like sacrifice is always for the benefit of others, not for personal gain. In our world, this idea of sacrificial love or sacrificing is almost always linked to because you'll be better off in the long run. You know, if I sacrifice this food now, I'll be more in shape and I will have a better physique. If I give this up, then I will do this. If I give this up, I'll be higher in my career. Like, there's always a trade-off. When you give something up, there's a trade-off to get something better. And Jesus is saying the trade-off is that the other person is better. It's no longer about you. It's not about growing yourself. It's about helping somebody else get ahead. It's that sacrifice to step out and to help somebody grow. As a church, we love to think of people outside of our own walls. Like, if you've caught our DNA at all, you'll get that. If this is your first time here, your first time watching online, we are so unashamedly in love with our community that we're going to serve people and we're going to show them Jesus by the way that we take care of them. There's an external focus to that it's not about us. It's about helping other people. It's about getting them ahead. And so we do things like the Shoe Project, where we go and we serve kids and we love kids, and we're doing the Farwell Shoe Project this week, and I'm super excited. It's going to be awesome to put these shoes on kids' feet and to take care of them and to take care of their community by the way that we do that. We do that through giving to the care store and making opportunities like that possible. We do that through outreach events and service opportunities and so many different ways. But one of the ways that we are hoping to do that we feel like God has pushed us toward, is to create this community center, this church for us, that we can serve the community, that we can welcome people in, that we can help meet tangible needs, that we can give people an opportunity 7 days a week to experience a Christ-like God-loving community where they are loved and where they are cared for. And the hope is that if they come in during the week and they experience this, that they'll ask the question, well, I wonder what happens here on a Sunday. And they come back and they see and they hear the gospel of Jesus and they see it in action 7 days a week through this space. And so I get questions about this all the time, like, I don't get it. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And it's never from people in our churches, outside the church. Why would you build a community center versus like a traditional church? Well, a traditional church sits empty for 6.5 days a week. And that I don't think that's great. Like, let's serve the community, let's love them. But this is the bigger thing. Churches can be really intimidating to a lot of people. And especially when you're a church that's reaching people who have given up on church and given up on God, there can be some scars that really quickly flare up. And then you reach an unchurched community that doesn't know Jesus yet, and that intimidation is high. But if you provide a space that is super common interest, common need, it's a really easy entry to go, okay, what's going on here? Like, I can be a part of this. I can see something. It's a place filled with those environments of common interest. And why would we do it for others versus for ourselves? Well, because I think that's a more of a Jesus model. Like, it's not about us. It's about serving people. It's about taking care of people. And yes, it will help our church. And yes, it will give us a place to gather, which is a very biblical idea that we can't neglect. But then we serve and we model and we sacrifice for other people. It allows us to reach those people who don't have a church home in a really profound way. And so this idea of sacrifice is even modeled in that. And I just want to paint a picture for you. I know we've talked about this building. We've talked about ideas of how we want to serve the community, how we want to provide spaces. I want to give you, some of you who aren't as good at imagining as others, have a harder time picturing things without a picture. And so I want to show you a little glimpse of what could be. Imagine what could be if we all sacrifice together, we all make this possible for our community. Take a look. I think all of that and more is possible in our community, to serve our community, to make something available to them so that we can love people and we can serve them and we can welcome them into a space that's totally usable for the community 7 days a week that also happens to house our church on Sunday mornings. Like, I think that's so possible for our community, and it's needed in our community. Let me share a little bit about some of these spaces and what they could provide for our community. First of all, there's things like this. Like a turf area and an indoor play. Michigan is unusable outside for half of the year. Can we just acknowledge that? Okay. But also, like, there is so much need for spaces for single parents to let their kids play. There's need for spaces for traditional families to let their kids play and to take care of each other, and a place where they can allow that to happen and do life together in such a way that allows them to build community with people around them, where they're around people in a similar stage of life, where they're around people from their community that they can connect with and they can grow in relationships with. And it provides rec space for the kids to take care of them and to help them be loved and cared for. Like something like that would be unbelievably cool in our community. The next one is this idea of having an auditorium space is super huge. We've identified because of our own needs, there are not a lot of spaces available for the community to use like this. Spaces for dance recitals, for music recitals, for concerts, for church service, for conferences, for events, for community gatherings, to be able to provide a space like this. Plus, having a broadcast room behind it actually allows us what we're doing kind of in the back corner here of creating an opportunity for a message of Jesus to reach the whole world, like to get out and to get beyond our four walls and to serve and to take care of people that way. I think there's such a cool opportunity with something like this. There's this next one, kid spaces. There's never enough kid spaces. If you're a parent, there's never enough options of places you can go and you can let your kids run and have fun and host birthday parties and community events and all that sort of thing, where kids can learn in classrooms, kids can have play places to go around in, or in particular, the bottom corner, my favorite, to offer some special needs areas for people with sensory needs, for kids or for adults or whoever, to have that space that's safe for them and to let them know that we care for them. They're not a lesser individual, they're not a forgotten individual. We care about you and we've got a space for you and you are welcome here. And that sadly doesn't exist much in our area. And so to take care of that need and to take care of families in that way. There's the idea of having some common spaces, some cafes, some lobby spaces would be the classic term for it, where people can just gather and socialize and be community members together, where you could have business lunches, where you could connect with like the Chamber of Commerce, where you could sit down with people and just build relationships and invest in each other's lives and to help each other and to connect and to grow and to meet tangible needs of food and coffee, but then connect with people and serve people and love people. Spaces like community rooms. You can go to the next one. Community rooms and teen lounges and spaces that are great for the community to use. When we've been talking with people about zoning and where can we buy land and where can't we and what's okay and how can we do this, there's all sorts of extra hoops that we have to jump through because of the size of the crowd that we reach and the people that we want to serve. And that's okay. Like, we'll jump through whatever hoops we need to make that possible for people. But they've all identified, I ask every one of them, what do you think this community needs? And the number one thing I hear is spaces for kids and teens. Okay, well good, we can do that. We can provide spaces for kids and teens, a safe place where they can hang out after school or in the summers or on weekends, or if they're skipping school or whatever, where they can gather and they can have this safe place where they can know that they're loved and they're cared for, and community rooms where meetings and conference events type things can happen, where practical needs can even be met, where we can do things like house the rotating homeless shelter and provide a physical space for them to rest and sleep and to shower and to do laundry. To provide that for our community is so huge. So there's opportunities like this all around us, and there's an opportunity in front of us to move toward that and to be that kind of a church for this community. But it's going to take the sacrifice of all of us. It's going to take the sacrifice for all of us. So I have two questions. One, are you in? Yeah, I am. And if you're not, that's okay. But come with me, because we're going to do this and we're going to have fun with it. And the other is this. Will you join me tonight to pray over this? We have an opportunity tonight at 7 o'clock at our offices, which are right next to Harbor Freight in town. Come join us at 7 o'clock. We're going to pray over this campaign. We're going to pray over the space. We're going to pray over what God has for us next through this. But I'm inviting you guys to join us. We're calling it Favor and Flavor tonight, where we're going to pray for God's favor as we enjoy some dessert flavors. So it's going to be fantastic. I promise, just like the Chick-fil-A waffle fries, they are calorie-free. So if you're worried about that, I've already prayed over each of them, and they are free of calories. That's not true. But come join us for that. But here's what I want you to remember. The impact of your sacrifice can change generations. Can change generations. And I don't just mean this from a building standpoint. I mean this in the way that you live. The impact of your sacrifice can change generations. I am confident confident that almost everyone inside of a church building has taken for granted the sacrifice that generations before them have given to make that building possible. We don't think about that, except when you're in a position like us where you don't have that yet. And we get to be the ones to sacrifice for our kids' generation and their kids' generation and this community to see Jesus and to be loved and to be cared for. But in your life, that sacrifice goes a long way to share the gift of God's love, to follow the model of the John 3:16 example that it's not about me. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to take care of you. We have the most important message in the world to share. Anyone can sacrifice for somebody else, but to do that with the heart of Jesus and the message of Jesus has the opportunity to change lives for eternity. It's the most important message in the world, and that's why we want to provide a space that we can do that better in. That's why we want to live that way in an example in our lives, that we represent the sacrifice of Jesus, that we serve people, that we love people. Because here's the idea: without a demonstration, a declaration is meaningless. You can say that you love Jesus, but if you don't show it, people don't care what you have to say. You can say that you love God, but if you aren't willing to give up pieces of your life that are holding you back, we're missing something. We can say as a church that we love this community, but if we don't go out and serve and love and care for this community, we're missing the mark. Like, without a demonstration, a declaration is meaningless. It says this in the book of Romans, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. He demonstrated his love. And we have the opportunity to demonstrate our love by the way that we care for people, by the way that we sacrifice for people, by the way that we invest in the future generations, by the way that we just put ourselves aside for the sake of helping somebody else look more like Jesus. By the way that we have the opportunity to put ourselves aside so that our hearts can look more like Jesus, so that we can grow, we can become an active follower of Jesus that puts their life on the line daily and says, it's not about me. It's about God's love. It's about serving him. It's about loving him by taking care of him. And so my question for you as you leave, and the question I want you to walk away with and ask yourself throughout this week, is very simple. Because Jesus was willing to sacrifice his life, I will choose to follow Jesus by sacrificing my what? What is it? If Jesus was willing to sacrifice his life for me so that I can have life and I can have an eternal connection with God the Father, what am I willing to sacrifice for his benefit? Is it time that I'm going to sacrifice time to serve the people around me and be okay being inconvenienced because that other person matters more? Is it sin? Issues in your life that are holding you back because your heart is still hard, or because you've chosen self-gratification or pride or envy or lust or whatever to be your primary mode of operation instead of sacrificing that so that your heart can look like Jesus? Is it finances that I've tried to hold control of that because it's my money and I want it now? Because it has a grip on your heart and you need to let go and trust that God can do so much more with that than you ever could. Is it your life where I've got this, I can handle this, but you know that Jesus has something better for you and you need to just surrender and trust Jesus to take that, to provide a new heart, to transform your heart and your mind into the image of himself so that you can become more like God, that you can serve God better, you can love people better, and so that you can have eternal life with Jesus. What is that? What do you need to sacrifice so that you can look more like Jesus? That's my question, and that's my prayer. And so I'm going to pray over each of us that God would reveal that and that we could take steps to follow him. God, I pray this morning that we model your heart in the way that we sacrifice for others, by the way that we care for others, by the way that we serve others. And God, I pray that you would show us each inside of our own hearts, God, what does it mean to sacrifice? What does it mean to kill something off for the benefit of others? What does it mean to let go of something so that you can work in my life better? God, I pray that you show each and every one of us what we need to kill off to look more like you. If there's pieces of our heart that are hard if there are pieces of our life where we're stuck in sin, if there's pieces of our life where we've decided, no, it's better for me to keep control, God, I pray that you reveal those to us and help us to learn how to let go of those things so that you can fill us more, so that your life and your love can be flowing through us. I pray over us as a church, God, that as we model sacrifice now for future generations, that you would open up doors like crazy to provide spaces like a facility for a home for us, a facility where we can serve the community, and spaces where we can love people 7 days a week and care for them and show them that you are for them and we are for them. God, I pray that you open up doors like mad. God, I pray that you show us how we can sacrifice financially, how we can sacrifice with our time, how we can sacrifice with our prayer lives, how we can sacrifice so that more and more people can experience the love of Jesus, the love that you've given us. Because God, I know you didn't give us this gift just for us. You gave this gift for the entire world. And it's our job, it's our mission to share that love with this community. God, show us how we can look more like you by the way that we love, by the way that we sacrifice, and by the way that we give of ourselves so that you can receive the honor and you can receive the glory. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.